excuse me. So we're talking about violence, right?
Right.
And even me being one that was in there, right? I'm looking at it and I'm saying, if these people are attacking people and people are being hurt, it's like, yeah, I really don't care about them being in solitary. If people are getting stabbed up and shanked, so can y'all give us some insight from your works now? How much are people really being attacked, or you know, in these prisons where they need to go to solitary? How much is compared to other prisons, or just that by itself? So how much are people being attacked?
Compared to other prisons, and I always have to compare it to from where I'm originally from, which is New York. In New York, not even upstate, just on Rikers Island, is the atmosphere, the violence is thick in the air. It's always potential for violence, and I don't mean just fights. I mean stabbings, cuttings, and assaults on police officers and things of that nature. However, when I did 10 years in prison in Connecticut, I didn't see it. It's actually specifically in Northern, where it's supposed to be the worst of the worst, so-called. The majority of people who's in this place is in there for catching a certain amount of tickets, and meaning like disobeying a direct order, which is the main thing that the COs use to stick you with disciplinary actions, disobeying a direct order. Right.
So let's say you're on the phone for 5 minutes over, they told you to hang up the phone 5 minutes ago, and you're telling your grandmother, well, I love you, just tell you. But you didn't do it as fast as, and you can get a ticket, and you can go to solitary confinement for that. Wow. You can, if let's say you catch 4 disobeying a direct order tickets, or just being out of place tickets, or reckless eyeballing tickets, right, or all these things that they have, or having too much contraband. Contraband, too much property, right, which they consider contraband. You have too much property. You can get a ticket and go to solitary confinement. And a lot of people are being misdiagnosed as a gang member. That happens all the time.
Let me ask you this. What about somebody was actually asking me too, you ever thought about being a CO? And I'm like, nah, couldn't do that. You know what I mean? And the reason being is because I can't see myself putting in all that time behind bars, because I'm technically still doing that. Now, I'm not saying every CEO ends up adopting some of the toxic things that are going on in there, but I would imagine some CEOs where that's their life,
absolutely,
don't they become just as much violent?
Yes, they do.
Absolutely.
Can we talk a little bit about that?
There's a lot of mental illness and domestic violence. I mean, you even have correctional officers who commit suicide. There's people that I know, like the 2 women that I know that went in and tried to be a CO, and they couldn't handle it. They said the conditions. One of them told me, just seeing our black men chained up like that, I couldn't do that. And then another one she stayed about a month, and she said she couldn't do it. She actually was working in Northern, where she said, she's a nurse, and she said, my oath is to do no harm. And she said, I'm actually harming when all I'm doing is drugging up these men in here, and that's all I'm providing. Wow. So she left. And then there's a nurse, when we went to Washington, there's a nurse who talked about how correctional officers go in and they're good people, and I had to push back on that a little bit. Yeah, they might have gone in good, and then they said, yeah, they go in, and some of them, she said, it takes sometimes just weeks for them to desensitize themselves to what they're seeing.
Right. And just to touch on that, that's a main component of the legislation that we're trying to get passed.
Okay.
Because it doesn't only affect the prisoners, it affects the staff members, the COs. That's why it's called the Protect Act that we're trying to push.
And on top of that, you have these facilities, like there's one they call Brooklyn.
Yeah.
They said the people that are there say they're actually rednecks. They're the police officers. I mean the correctional officers. So they are so racist, but they have all this power over these people. So that's another thing you have to worry about.
Yeah.
So let's go into the legislation. I know the last time the plan was to begin pushing this legislation, but so much has taken place. Can we talk about the steps that we've made and where are we going moving forward?
Well, we started a campaign in 2015, and that started around just bringing attention to solitary confinement. And so we had we had a bill just like we have now that we put forth. But by the time we got the bill, it was so watered down, we really didn't do anything. But what it did do two things. It allowed us, the Department of Correction has to give an annual report who's in solitary and how long they were kept in there. So they want to keep a record of that. And another policy we had was, it was a small move, but it was something. We had different community meetings, public hearings. My son was one of the people who went in Northern at the age of 17. And so we did get them to say that now you can't go in those places unless you're 18. So they did raise it up
18?
one little year.
What do they think that did?
They want to be able to say that they did something, so that's what they did. But I said right from the beginning, I said this did nothing to scratch, not even scratch the surface of what we want. And so we're coming back, and we're coming back this time and letting them know we're not going to be satisfied with no watered down bill that does absolutely nothing. So,
yeah. What about you, Lady? What have you seen as far as progress, or where do you see this going?
Well, I was actually still inside for the first round, 2015. But the bill that we're pushing for, we've been doing a lot of lobbying. We was, we constantly at the Capitol, speaking to legislators and getting their support for it.
And right now, I'm not too sure how to touch on how it is, how's it going right now. It's looking promising though. We're not. We have certain things that we're not trying to compromise on.
Yeah.
Like for instance, the major thing being shut down Northern, and we have a deadline that should be shut down. And then
Nathan and us are strong on that. We're not compromising that.
Yeah.
Now, what is the pushback on that? What you were talking about as far as the union, is that the pushback on not shutting down Northern?
You know, the union was also responsible for in 2017 because we had the commissioner who was with us every step of the way. All the things that we wanted. But when they go to and talk to the union pushes back real hard, and they have a lot of power, just like the police union. They have a lot of power. And so when I hear the commissioners saying it's a necessary tool, I hear the mouth of the union people saying, pushing back on him for even considering closing Northern.
How many people of color are we talking to when you're going up for this fight? That we're appealing to. How many people of color? Our people are there.
You talking about?
You mean like
the legislators?
You're talking, the commissioner,
It's not that many.
The people that are head of the unions.
No.
Not that many.
No.
And that's a whole nother fight.
Right.
But
But if you talk about the population, of course, we know that's black and Hispanic.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the population in Northern, which is the harshest conditions in the system, almost 90% are black and Hispanic.
90%.
Almost 90%. They have 75 people in there with 100 and close to 150 correctional officers. And you know they get paid big money. So what are 150 officers doing with only 75 people who are locked in their cell 23 hours a day? They come out 1 hour in chains.
24 hours.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes 24. So what are they doing? They're making all that money to do nothing. And you think they're not going to push back when they start saying you're going to have to let people out and work now?
Could I just touch on it was a documentary that was done a couple of years ago, The Worst of the Worst, and actually the commissioner at that time spoke about the reasoning for keeping Northern open was for space. Now this was out of the horse's mouth. This is actually what he said, that it was for bed space. So that proves what I'm saying, that you can get a ticket for anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that you're super violent and you're dangerous to the population.
The way it is in America.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
You get criminalized for anything.
Right.
Yeah.
It depends on the charge they want to give you.
There's no real justification for them putting people through these inhumane conditions. Not let alone just being locked up for all those hours. It's unsanitary as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, go into that, because I know you've definitely touched on that.
Absolutely.
Because I don't think people realize some of how disgusting it is.
I'm gonna use a word that was used on me when I was
Can you say it
denied.
on air?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
When I was denied parole, it's horrendous. And when they denied me parole, they was talking about my ticket history, miscellaneous tickets. Most of my tickets was disobeying a direct order, but it's horrendous. But the conditions in Northern is horrendous.
When you're talking about is people who have mental illnesses. So a lot of the people who have these mental illnesses, their form of expression or of feeling alive or whatever or protest against the system is to cut themselves or to spread feces. And let me reiterate the fact that they have mental illnesses. It's not that they're just bad people or they just like nastiness. Right. They have mental illnesses, and probably they didn't have that when they came there. And the conditions, like I was at a symposium. I want to quote somebody. I don't know his name, but I was at a symposium the other day, and the guy was speaking about water. He used an example about water, right? Now you take water and you freeze it, right? And it turns into ice. But the essence of it is still water. If you boil it, it can turn into steam. But the essence is still water. The conditions is what made it turn into ice, or it made it turn into steam. And that's the same thing with people. Now you put these people in these horrific conditions, and that's what they do. And then you take these same people and expect them to come back into the community and being contributing members of society without any issues. And the majority of these people that I just spoke to somebody on the corner who she was so interested in this T-shirt, and she said she was in solitary confinement, and she's one of the people that people walk past because she is, she has issues and think she's just crazy, and well, they don't know her story. They don't know what she's been through. So, yeah.
How much would you say solitary confinement and experiencing that contributes to recidivism?
I think it would be highly contributory, because you're damaging people, you're destroying people, you're breaking people, and so and then once you do all that, you put them back on the street. Of course, when they're in there, a lot of times a lot of these people are on medication also. That's another huge thing in this prison. All these people on antipsychotics.
Right.
And this is all in Northern.
No, not just
Northern.
No, Northern is just the worst.
But Northern is the worst.
I don't think we could look past the fact that either that a lot of people that are going into these conditions, man, like we as a people, we've been traumatized before we even go in.
Exactly.
So this is trauma on top of trauma on top of trauma on top of trauma. Brain is just getting worse. Heart condition just getting worse, man. It's like
diabetes is real high with people coming out of the prison.
Rampant. PTSD, schizophrenia, all kinds of things that people did not have
when they came in.
When they went inside prison, and they come home with these, and then they don't get the adequate treatment, and they just get kicked back to the street.
And psychiatrists say that after just a few days of being in isolation like that your brain starts functioning in a different manner. That's after just a few days.
Wow. And on average, they're in solitary confinement for how long?
Weeks, months, years.
The setup for, I don't know what it is in Northern now. I can't speak for, I haven't been in there for years. But the setup used to be a year program.
But within that year, it's so antagonistic with the COs, with the culture, where you could be so-called model prisoner, and you're gonna catch tickets for whatever. And every time you catch a ticket, you gotta start all over for 4 months. So people could be in there languishing for years and trying to get out of the program that they set up.
But it's starting over every time you turn around.
Every time you catch a ticket,
and there go a ticket. And now you got to start all over and get subjected to, and then some people just get immersed in that world.
Yeah.
But now they're labeled and stigmatized, and then it follows them into other prisons. When they finally do get out, when they go to population, you have this stigma if you've been in Northern, and you can actually get retaliated against by the staff members because they think you're some assaultive
Also, they use Northern as like, oh, that's where you want to go?
Yeah, oh, you using Northern.
Yeah.
Or that, yeah.
Yeah,
or that's
that.
where you was at.
That's where
You
you
know
was
what I
at,
mean?
or that's where you
So they're
was
gonna
at.
treat you in a certain
In a
manner
certain
off the
manner,
cuff.
yeah.
Right.
You know, when I think of Northern, I think of like I'm reminded of when I was a kid watching some like Roy Rogers, and they have horses that they want to break. And I remember even as a I remember even as a child, I would be so saddened watching how they took this horse that was just free and just living life, and they wanted to break him. And they did that. They took away everything from him, and the horse was never the same. And I remember as a child thinking, that is so sad that what they did to that horse. But that's what they're doing to people.
Absolutely.
They're putting them in Northern, and they're breaking them. And some of them are never be repaired. Because another thing that psychiatrists say is after 15 days, many people will have irreversible brain damage. Irreversible. So that means sometime for the rest of their life, they are just damaged.
Can you touch on the history of this? You know, you broke it down a little bit last episode, but I want people to really see where this came from and how crazy it is that it still exists.
Well, years ago, it actually started as, you know, people thought there was a religious group. I can't think of the name of them now.
Quakers.
The Quakers.
Yeah.
They thought it was a way to help people to like look at their life and the mistakes they made. They said let them go in solitude and give them a Bible and let them look at their lives and the mistakes they made and what they have to do. So that sounds, you know, that kind of decent. Couple of days just being by yourself and just thinking about life. But they turned this into, they got some crackpot that decided that we can turn this into something that we can have people put in there for months and years and for no telling how long. And it was used to break the spirit. I think, for me, I believe it's to break the spirit of any person that comes up in there thinking that they're going to exercise some rights to anything.
And what's ironic is now we have actually Quakers that are supporting us now.
Mm-hmm.
So the same people who started this, now they're supporting ending it.
Like, I'm just curious. When I hear Quakers, I automatically go to like Amish.
It make me think of the oatmeal.
Does it look like the guy on the cover?
Nah.
I don't want to say, but
2020
they're certainly not what you're going to find in the Baptist church. I'll put it that way. But these are people with good intentions, and that's what I say about good intentions.
No doubt.
And
Respect to the Quakers.
Right.
Yeah,
and they say it too. They are really against what happened. They hate that their name is even associated with it now, because they said this is far from what we were thinking of.
Yeah,
so they are definitely distancing
That
themselves
was
from
supposed to
it.
be about repenting.
And they're very clear. They're very clear about where this originated from. They own that.
Oh yeah, they own it. But
That's what's up. I respect that.
Yeah, but they apologize and tell why they did it, but it was nothing. It was nowhere supposed to be like it is now. Just torture of people.
And they're walking with you
Oh yes.
to legislation,
Yes,
to
they've
DC
written
and all
letters.
that.
They're doing everything with us.
So what would be the alternative? That's as much as I want to see it go. You know, what is another alternative for those people who do need some time to be able to focus, reflect? Like, have you offered any alternatives in this legislation?
Or the ones that are very violent, very
Right.
First of all, how did they get very violent? That's the question I always ask. Because if you put, like I said, if you put people in solitary and you keep them in there too long, you think of it like when you put a dog in a cage and you abuse them and taunt them and keep them in darkness, all that stuff, and then one day you decide to open that cage. Now, do you think that dog is going to come out licking you and wagging his tail? Right. No, it's going to come out vicious. Mm-hmm. So we're creating these monsters and then trying to justify why we have places like Northern by saying, oh, look at how violent they are. We need to put them there. You can have solitary confinement. No one's saying don't put people in a place where they can protect themselves and other people, but do it in a more humane manner. Okay. It shouldn't be weeks and years and months to have somebody cool down. Right. So yeah, you can still have a place to separate people, but it should never be a punishment, which is what the international law said. Solitary confinement was never supposed to be about punishment. It's about in an emergency situation where you need to cool people down, you need to have some place to put them. And we can do that without Northern, because Northern is not set for cooling anybody down. It's for plain torture.
Have they talked at all about implementing more therapy, more therapists?
I was just thinking that.
In this process, even for those that are going to solitary confinement?
Have we spoke about that? Shane?
Well, have they even suggested it?
Well, I'm gonna be honest. I think they're thinking about going the more therapeutic way. I was just talking about this.
Okay.
They're trying to go more therapeutic now because more people that don't look like us are ending up in prison. It's pretty much like with the crack opioid.
Yeah.
You know, now let's talk
Now
about
it's
compassion and it's public health now. It's no longer
The
public
problem I have
safety.
with that is, are you going to now implement therapists that are culturally competent to black and brown prisoners?
That's
Or are
what
you
should
going to
happen.
Just have, you know,
Just
white people
anybody
that
want a
pretty-
job.
Yeah, that pretty much really aren't culturally competent.
And have no
we
clue.
already have that issue in the school.
Right.
Where teachers aren't culturally competent, so
Mhm.
they're automatically writing kids off as violent.
Mhm.
Violent and bad.
You know
They
what I'm
don't.
saying?
They don't know how to deal
So
with
I'm
them.
kind of iffy on that. If they're going to do that, they have to implement therapists that are going to be culturally competent.
Mhm.
You're not going to have a black or brown person in front of you, and because of one conversation, you can now give your diagnosis,
And that's what they
then
do.
give that over to the judge and say, look, the diagnosis is clear. Right?
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? So I'm very weary about that.
Yeah.
Can I ask you? We know how much, again, do one prisoner cost?
I think
I want to say it's 35,000.
I heard it was higher than that, like 40-some thousand.
Yeah.
But then
And it's
Northern
more
is over
in Northern.
100,000.
It's more in Northern.
Hold up.
So this place that they're
Yeah.
fighting to keep people in, and they keep talking about they need money and such that nature. This place that y'all fighting for it costs more to hold
Yeah.
people there.
So wait a minute. How many people in Northern?
Right
There's
now,
75
it's
now.
currently 75.
75 people, 100,000 each person.
Right.
And don't talk about the 150 COs that are sitting in there watching those people that are in the cage for 23 hours a day.
Who owns, because we know prisons are privately owned, who owns Northern?
State,
The
right?
state of Connecticut.
Yeah, Connecticut, I don't think has private prisons.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
It's
So the state
prison,
owns
yeah.
it.
right.
Right.
I'm trying, you got to follow that money.
Yeah.
There should be.
It's always about the money.
We shouldn't be 100. We shouldn't be taxed on anything.
Not at all.
With them doing that for that long as they've been doing it, we shouldn't be taxed on nothing. Everything's covered.
Well, a
It-
couple of years ago, we had over 400 people in there, and because of the
Yeah,
fight
it
that
just
we've been
went down just
doing,
because of the
we've
fight
been
that we did.
that it's been
Because
going down. It went down
Northern
to
was
2
packed.
something. Yeah,
Salute, y'all.
When I was
Salute,
in Northern,
salute.
it was packed, and there's people in there who's been in there for years. I know I'm not gonna name him, but it's a person who he's out of there now, but he's been in there since 1999, and his sanctions are crazy. Like now, if you want to talk about alternatives to violence and things of that nature, sanctions like loss of phone, loss of
visits.
recreation, they give out these sanctions like overkill. There's people with years of loss of phone, loss of mail, which is against the law. They ain't supposed to do that, but loss of visits, and they rotate it. In Northern, what they would do, let's say they give you 3 sanctions: loss of phone, mail, and visits. They rotate it. So
For 45 days or so, you'll be on loss of mail, but you can get the other 2. And then for the other 45 days, and they rotate it. And the so-called, I'm just going on a tangent now, but the so-called crazy people, because there's people in Northern that's on death row. There's death row prisoners there. I think it's about 13 people on death row, and these are the worst of the worst, right? These people that's in there, and I'm not advocating for murderers and things of that nature, but the people who are murderers and people the general public think are monsters, those are the people who are the most I'm not going to say model prisoners, but they're not as violent inside prison as people would think.
So basically, because they're not as violent,
it's because of their crime.
Then there's no reason to
yeah.
make them worse by putting them in solitary confinement.
It's because of the heinous nature of their crime.
Yeah.
Like, and if you think about people, my father, for instance, did 27 years for a murder. However, it's the people who do these kind of crimes years and years ago, the OGs, all they want to do is do their time. They're not in here trying to be violent and assaultive on staff. They want to do their time and get home.
Right.
And I would guess it would be people who's in and out of jail, just slapped on the wrist, maybe they're young and they get into fights and things of that nature. They bucking against
it's
the
a
system.
strike. They think it's a strike.
It's a strike, but it's not like outrageously prevalent.
And the crazy thing about that, he talked about the people on death row. A U.S. judge just ruled that because one of them filed a lawsuit against his conditions, and the U.S. judge filed a complaint with DOC saying, yes, the conditions he's on are cruel and inhuman, and we need for you to change them. Now, if they're saying that for death row people, what about those people? I mean, because there's people in there who haven't even been convicted of anything. I know when my son went to Northern, he hadn't even been convicted. He was 16. That's another thing. A lot of solitary and stuff goes on in Manson Youth too. So he got 4 tickets in Manson Youth, so that pushed him to Northern. And so Northern is the worst of the worst, but Manson Youth is not no cakewalk either. The federal government is actually looking into the conditions that they're holding people in.
And they're still going through that, even though it was legislation passed that they cannot put the youth through this, and it's still going on. So
we're sitting with Leighton Johnson and Barbara Fair talking about ending solitary confinement. And if you are following this conversation right now, if you're listening to this conversation and you're listening to the radio, or maybe you're streaming, you can follow us on YouTube. You can subscribe to Movie Target Podcast on YouTube, because we're going to continue this for the next hour. All right, so we do end in a couple minutes, but I want everybody to know that you can go right to YouTube, and we're going to keep this convo going. Right? All right, so what do you think needs to be done now? What are the next steps now to really get? Are we waiting on them to just make a vote? Are we waiting for the commissioner to say, okay, let's end it? What are we waiting for?
I don't think the commissioner is going to end it on his own. I don't think legislators are going to do it on their own. It's going to take a lot of work for us, a lot of pushback from us to get legislators to do what needs to be done. Commissioner is, like I said, you may think he has this all to himself. He has to listen to the union, and they are very powerful. So, I mean, it's nice to get him on his side, but we also got to somehow be able to change the power, take some of that power from the union to make sure we do the right thing. The only way that's going to happen, in my opinion, is when people who are most impacted start stepping up. Like we had the vigil in Cheshire. We had a couple of black people that showed up. The place should be full, because when you look inside the Cheshire, the people that were going in there visiting, they were black and Hispanic.
Yeah, and they were driving past us to go to the vigil.
Right.
Driving past us to leave.
So we have to start standing up, and I mean churches too. I really come down on churches, because the way I was raised, church was there to support and help, and I don't see that happening now. And when I send the information out, I send it to churches.
So really quick, Leighton, you have something for us?
Yeah,
right?
actually, I'm bearing some gifts.
Everybody knows I'm a graphic tee head.
Yeah,
so we got here. Hey, we got the Stop Solitary Confinement, Dismantle the Dungeon T-shirts. All right, real quick, because we are going to wrap up. We're going to continue this on YouTube. Can you let them know what the hashtag is and where they can go to join this cause?
www.stopsolitaryconnecticut.org.
Yes. All right. 94.3 WYBC, the rhythm of the city. This is Moving Target.
Peace.